Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Ad Maiora by the band Ad Maiora.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Of course, if you don't know this yet, every time I put an emphasis on a name like Ad Maiora, it's because it is spelled with an exclamation mark. So it is Ad Maiora by the band Ad Maiora without an exclamation mark. What am I saying? Here are some of my favorite bits from this album. So let me start off this review by telling you all that this will probably be a shorter than usual review. I hope it wouldn't be. I hope I'd at least give you, the 10 minutes of enjoyment every day, but who knows, maybe this will be short, and the reasoning for it, well, there's two reasons for it. The first one, this is a pretty obscure and quite new band. We don't really know a lot about them, we don't have a lot of lores or history about it, so there's really not a lot of information that I can give you about the band Ad Maiora. Now the second thing is, listening to this album took me 3 days, and I wasn't that occupied with doing other things. I just really wasn't inclined to listen to it like in one sitting like I usually do with most of my albums. I actually did it in 3 sittings throughout a 3-day time span, so you can infer from that that it's not one of those albums that I'm super hyped about and I really want to talk about it. So yeah, anyway, Ad Maiora, which is by the way an Italian way of congratulating someone for accomplishing or finishing something great, which when translated literally means towards greater things, is an Italian band that formed in Milan back in the year of 2009. And these guys started off by making several contributions to the progressive scene before in 2014 releasing their debut album titled Ad Maiora, which is the one we are reviewing today. It also seems like these guys released another even slightly more successful album in 2016, but someone decided to recommend this debut album instead of that one, so I'm just gonna take that as it is. Now this band comprised of 5 members are known to praise their music as being originals in every sense, and while this claim could be correct, it could also be refuted. If there's one thing that you can say about their music is that they don't stick to one known thing, and they do flow between various musical styles while also at the same time maintaining their own unique sound. But on the other hand, you really can't not listen to this album while not making at least a slight comparison to the music of Camel. Everything from the deep and groovy bass to the overall keyboards leading the music and the low-key Camel vibe that it just gives off, you gotta at least give them that. They have this slight Camel inspiration in them. Now I don't know if this is intentional, but that's just something of an observation I had when listening to this album. But I feel like I'm at least obligated to address the fact that these guys are in fact Italian, and they do see themselves as a part of the Italiano Progressivo movement. They do sound like Italian prog in some way, but we must remember that these guys came a long time after the prime time of most Italian prog bands back in the 70s and the 80s, and their sound does take that same sort of classical influences like you might find on PFM or New Trolls, but at the same time they do feature something new. You might even call this the Italian prog of the 21st century. Now I must be quite honest here, as I said in the beginning, this album took me 3 days to listen to, and this isn't productive for me, and I didn't really do that out of sheer will. It was just the fact that this album kind of just bored me or disinterested me more. There were certain sections on here which were fun, but they were very far and in between, so I couldn't really stay focused on this album for a long period of time, and I must admit I probably dozed off many times because this band makes a lot of use of repetition. Now with that being said, this doesn't make for a bad album per se, and I didn't really suffer through listening to it, just nothing about it was really that good, and that memorable. And yes, this is one of those cases of an album that could have easily been cut down to like half an hour of pretty good music, but as a whole, stretching for an hour and 10 minutes, it just wasn't really doing it for me. Now let me also point this out that this album is mostly instrumental, and when I remember it, I think of it as an instrumental album, but there are actually 4 tracks on here with lyrics, and they are sung in the good old English, and they aren't even accented in an Italian way, and they do really sound genuinely just, you know, English made. Now, I don't really know why this decision was made, and I don't know if it's a good decision. Personally, I find it to be quite unneeded, but at the same time, it really didn't make this album worse than what it probably was. And as I said, this isn't a bad album, just not a very good one. But saying all of that, there were a few songs on here that did tickle my fancy, and specifically those were Diatriba. Now Diatriba is the opening track for this album, and I guess it kind of hyped me for it. Listening to the deep and groovy bass at the forefront really just made me hyped for this album, which didn't turn out to be that good as I thought it would be, but still it is a pretty good song, not that much when I came back to it later. Another good song on here is Strange. It's a really chill track, and it's one of those tracks with the singing on it. I just think that it really came at the right time. I was kind of tired, and that really fit with the overall mood of things, but again, coming back to it later, I didn't really find it to be all that interesting. The only track on this album that I do really find interesting even to come back to is the third to last track called Corolla. Now this one, it is actually pretty fun. It is the most progressive one on this entire album. I don't believe that this album isn't progressive, but it does stand on the edge of being quite stale, but this one is definitely progressive. It sees a lot of mood changes and shifts, and it's really quite nice, and I think that what really sold it for me were the 2 last minutes of this track, which featured an Irish folk inspired section, which was really fun to listen to and genuinely made me want to dance to it. And one other thing as a side note, when you do reach this album's end, if you're gonna listen to this one, there is a short track called Exit. Now I know that there's quiet for a long time, and don't be tempted to click off this album quite yet. Listen to the entire song because it does feature something else to actually close off this album. I'm not gonna elaborate more on that, but just know that that's a thing. But yeah, it's a fine album. It does actually quite linger on the edge of being stale and being progressive, so I don't really know how to categorize it. It's fine. It's mostly background music, I guess, and there were certain parts on here which were good, but if you do like good keyboard playing and a very deep bass, then you might actually enjoy this one quite a bit. So this cover art caused me much pain, because when I saw it, there was only one question going through my mind, and it wasn't that of a hard one to ask. It was just, oh, I wonder to myself where this picture was taken. You see, you can tell that this is a picture and not a drawing. There's just this sort of scripture made out of stone in a wall somewhere in the world saying Ad Maiora, and I just wanted to know where that was taken. So I googled it up, and I did find some pictures of it from stock image websites, but none of them stated where they were taken. Now, the only thing I could pretty confidently say is that this was somewhere in Italy. Duh, basically, of course it's in Italy, why would it be anywhere else? But further than that, I really couldn't find out anything. I think it's somewhere in Rome, I really don't know. I want to get to know it, but I just don't know how. So if anyone knows where this location is on our planet, I'd love to know that. But other than that, it's a pretty, you know, benign cover. I don't really get the high contrast of colors and shades on here, but I guess it's an artistic choice of its kind. So yeah, 6 out of 10. It's an okay score for an okay album. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Gods of 1973 by Castle Canyon. This is one of those albums with a really interesting history to it, so I'm really looking forward to making that episode. But for now, I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wan, Wrist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.